Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for tuning into PTV World. Right now, you're watching World This Morning alongside Shahzad Khan and Maha Makhdoom, obviously. But
Good morning,
today,
everyone.
obviously, is a very important day in the history of Islam and religion, which we practice and preach, obviously, at the same time. So today, according to the Islamic calendar, it's 9th of Muharram al-Haram. Now, we definitely have to highlight the importance of this particular day, how important this day is, and what is the sanctity behind the entire incident of Karbala, and how does it actually relate to the current scenarios, what is the philosophy behind it, what sort of mysticism revolves around it. So as per that particular information, I think we do have experts over here
We
with
do.
us. We do have scholars at the same time. But Maha, would you like to add up?
Yeah, I would just like to add is that, like Shahzad said, that what is the relevance of this, day in history today? Because there is one, because we still observe this, it's not just one day, it's a whole month that one observes.
Exactly.
It's a way of life, it's an ideology, and we're going to look at the literature link with that as well, and how it's influenced not just our continent, but beyond our continent, the literature, the mysticism, everything, from metaphors to everything. We've got, special guests in the studios to discuss this with us today. And one thing is, it's about the difference, it's a part of righteousness,
Yes.
the path of
The difference between right and wrong.
Exactly, you took the words out of my mouth.
And to be very honest, Maha, at the same time, I think this entire incident of Karbala, I think it has a message for the generations to come. And
Exactly.
after that particular incident, we have been receiving that particular message. But are we even practicing it? Is it a slogan or a motto? So I think we have to differentiate in between. And how many times do we even tell our kids whether what is the importance of this particular day, or are we just observing it because of the fact that we are supposed to observe it? So we'll be talking about all these dimensions of this particular incident and the importance of this particular day and the entire month itself with the experts over here. But yeah, you wanted to add?
No, that basically that it's just an example of that. In the end, the path of the right person prevails, because despite what may have happened back then, or what people think, facts and history show, and we try to follow
Maha,
what's right.
and at
now.
the same time, Maha, there was a time when parents used to guide their children, when parents used to teach and educate their children what their religion was all about. But are we forgetting that practice? Are we forgetting on what our values are and will be in the years to come? So that's will be what we'll be discussing today. And I think we'll be sharing a lot of information which you might not be aware of. We'll be actually relating this entire incident of Karbala with other incidents which have taken place in the years recently. So let's go. Let's just directly plunge into the conversation. But obviously, this day, this particular day, and this entire month, it holds a very deep, a very sorrow, and a very grief remembrance of the incident of Karbala itself. So I'll just directly introduce to you who our guest is. So very honorable, on my right hand side, I've got Dr. Jamil Qalander, who's a multilingual scholar and a poet himself. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much for coming over.
Thank you.
Lovely
Thank you.
having you.
Thank you.
And alongside Dr. Jamil, we have got Mr. Munir Fayaz, who's a scholar and a poet himself. Thank you very much
you
for
for
coming
joining
over.
us.
How are you?
Fine, how you?
Thank you very much once again. And alongside Mr. Munir Fayaz, we've got Professor Saeed Ahmed, who's been to the show many times, and he's a Sufi scholar himself. Thank you very much for coming over. And anything you would love to share with all our viewers, maybe anything from your own poetry.
Actually, this incident, when we talk about Karbala, Imam Hussain, so I refer always to Sufi poets. So Mia Muhammad Bakhsh Shah, Bulle Shah, Wala Shah. So here, the personality of Imam Hussain is very unique in the entire human history. So when Mia Saab talks about Hazrat Imam Hussain, that how this incident happened, and there is two forces are there. One is the oppressor, other is the oppressed one. So the one is the rightful, the other is the wrongful. So rightful force, that's the Hazrat Imam Hussein's personality or the character. That is a basic, that is on the side of the right, and the other side, the Yazid, which is called. So here, it is, Hazrat Mia Sahib says that he had power, all sort of powers. He had worldly power, he had spiritual power, but even then he remained just according to the will of God, he just followed the will of God. Like hundi kuwat zor na laya, baithe man razain, is duniya to pyase challe, deen duninde sain. So here, what we say that is, some people think that maybe he has what he can do. You know, it's easy for him. He could just, but for the grandson of the Holy Prophet, who was teaching the whole humanity the truth and the path of the God and the right path. So he just wanted to show the exemplary, one example for the whole humanity. Okay, look, this is the right and this is the wrong. So for the right, even he sacrificed himself, he sacrificed his whole family. So this is what he has done and made the example for the whole humanity ever, since its birth and since till its end. You know.
And we will definitely talk about the path chosen by him, but moving on to Qalandri Sahib over here. Qalandri Sahib, first of all, I would like you to highlight the importance and the sanctity of this incident of Karbala.
Thank you very much. Actually, the importance and relevance of the event of Karbala and the tragedy becomes conspicuous and outstanding when we look at it in the background of the desert culture, the culture which has been mentioned in the Quran, the culture of Al-Arab, the Bedouin culture, the culture of the desert. Of course, there was poetry, literature, and all things, but literature was identified in the history of Arabic literature as the literature of Jahiliyyah. And all this Jahiliyyah culture was rotating around arrogance, pride, tribal prejudice. And its symbols were gallantry, fighting, warring, to kill, and to self-assertion, and at the expense of other life. And this culture was very dangerous. If it had continued, of course, it would have been very much dangerous to humanity at large. With this tragedy, this event of Karbala, when it happened, it radically changed this culture.
Wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful.
The culture of the desert became the culture of human emotions,
Yes.
Wow.
compassion, sympathy, love, peace, harmony, and also, of course, it generated a culture of fine arts, its own peculiar philosophy and metaphysics and mysticism. It was because of this and what happened really from tribal prejudice, and then of course nationalism, which was existing prior to the emergence of Islam.
Exactly.
It was imperialism, nationalism, and the whole scenario was this scenario of wars, bloodshed, mischief in the earth. But with this tragedy, the whole scenario changed. Now there is a new culture, the culture of tolerance, the culture of love, peace and security, which was acceptable to all culture, to all nation, to all religion. That is why even Sikhs, they love Imam Hussain.
Yes, they do.
Even there are Hindus, most of they, when this Ashura this event is celebrated, they celebrate, some of Hindus, they celebrate even Ashura. And many people in the Europe, they feel at home with this event because this is more, more of human value.
Qalandri Sahib, for the sake of my information, since I'm a layman, obviously, so when we use the word celebration, is it the right word to use?
No, it's just not a celebration, it's a commemoration.
Commemorate.
We commemorate the Imam Hussein. And when we commemorate Imam Hussein, and what is Imam Hussein? Imam Hussein is a beauty.
Yes.
The beauty of human emotion, sympathy,
Okay.
delicate emotions. It is the culture of heart which was generated by this tragedy. Not only the culture of heart, the culture of intellect, the culture of reason. Prior to this culture, there was the culture of arrogance, pride, tribal pride and prejudice and arrogance.
Exactly.
And it was the culture of desert,
Yes.
with no emotion, no sympathy, total apathy to human emotions.
Okay. So this
So
was a big, major.
this was a major change,
Major.
major change.
Okay.
It was indeed.
Okay. Let me ask Munir. Moving on from, as Dr. Jamil has just said, that it crossed boundaries. It wasn't just in one region. It was something that all of humanity, all of humankind could empathize with. It brought tolerance. How did it impact on the literary side? How are these events remembered in the West or with
How
literature?
do you think the literature actually explains about this incident?
After this event, the language of literature that transformed not only the language but the meanings in that. It became a metaphor, and it's very difficult for an event, for any event, to be elevated to become a metaphor.
Right.
There are so many events. History is full of them. History is, from a point of view, is a record of wars. Why this one war? Why this one tragedy is still discussed by everyone in the world? Because of its metaphysical aspects.
Right.
The metaphysical dimensions in it, they are so great that make it a transborder metaphor. That's why I'd like to share Napoleon.
Sure.
He wrote an elegy to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and as Sir said, Jamil Sahab, that Nehru, Gandhi, the Hindu leaders, they pay tribute to Imam Hussein in a high note. Even Baba Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, he speaks of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in a very high note. Thomas Carlyle, the famous British scholar, continental scholar and poet, heroes, he discusses heroes as prophets, heroes as philosophers, heroes as saints, heroes as poets, heroes as mystics. He speaks of Imam Hussein alayhi salam as a person who has inspired and still is inspiring whole of the mankind. To what has just been said by the two worthy guests, to rise against the oppressors,
Yes.
against tyrants. Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar in one of his very beautiful couplets said, कत्ले हुसैन असल में मर गए यजीद है, इस्लाम जिंदा होता है हर करबला के बाद. The assassinations, the martyrdom of Hussein is in fact the murder of Yazid. Islam revives after every Karbala. Now every Karbala. Why every Karbala? Because this Karbala then turns into a metaphor. The current world, wherever there is oppressor, wherever there is a tyrant, that's a Karbala, and there we need to walk on the footsteps of Imam Hussein.
So Hazrat Imam
Okay.
Hussein, obviously, when everybody is paying rich tribute to him, obviously he deserves that, and he's obviously sacrificed his life for the mankind. I'm not talking
the
about
mankind.
one religion. I'm not talking about any other sect. It was for the mankind. So now talking about Hazrat Imam Hussein and relating the entire scenario with current situation, Qalander Sahab, don't you think that we have actually forgotten our values and we have not learned from that particular incident, and we are going back to that desert culture once again?
Yes, I fully agree, because we not only have forgotten those values, we have become oblivious of the important value of the real philosophy and mystique and ethos of the tragedy of Karbala. The tragedy of Karbala has brought a radical change in human thinking in the entire world, even in the area of philosophy, philosophy of science, social sciences, mysticism, and fine arts. We are sitting here, you are wearing this black
Yes, exactly.
costume, and then the background is black.
Yes.
I visited Lahore, I met a bishop, and bishop of around about 35 churches.
All right.
I saw him, he was sitting behind me. This, I looked at him. He was wearing this black costume. I was fascinating and asked him that this is the dress which Imam Hussein used to wear.
Yes.
Wear the cross, then he took the cross and he put the cross. So I said, what is the meaning of this cross? This cross symbolizes human emotions. Jesus, according to your philosophy, redeemed mankind, atone mankind, and this is of course a very valuable concept
It is indeed.
because he died for humanity,
Yes.
according to your philosophy.
Yes.
But according to our notion, Imam Hussein repeated this thing, but in a different way.
In a very different way.
In a very different way. Jesus did this single-handedly, and Imam Hussein took his kith and kin and almost all his household members, including female,